Warm welcome to this lecture series on organizational behavior. We are on the chapter on emotions at workplace. This is going to be our last lecture in this chapter. I'll quickly summarize what happened in our previous lectures. We looked at the importance of emotions in our life. We also looked at some of the characteristics of emotions. One particular issue we discussed was emotions are contagious, which means we can easily acquire a certain emotion from people around us. Especially in workplace, it becomes very important to manage emotions because it's not just you who are getting affected, but also others acquire those emotions. We also looked at different types of emotions, which are broadly classified into self-conscious and social emotions. We also looked at this concept called mood. So compared to emotions, moods are very generalized in nature. Emotions are very specific and temporary. Mood might remain for some time. We also looked at some of the specific aspects of emotion which may influence workplace behavior. So we looked at spillover effect, how emotions in one sphere of life, which is family, can influence our emotions or performance in other sphere of life like work. It can be other way around also. It can be either positive or negative. Positive means something happening in one sphere positively influences our emotions and behavior in another sphere. So one important implication of this spillover effect is we can change negative emotions in one sphere by getting energy from the other sphere. For example, if your personal life you're undergoing some negative emotions or negative experiences which makes you feel depressed or sad, you can perform well in your workplace, and that sense of achievement can help you overcome or handle negative emotions in your personal sphere. We also looked at emotional labor. We looked at two levels of exhibiting emotional labor: acting and perceiving them in a real sense. So acting can be surface acting or deep acting. The third kind is naturally showing the emotions. So we looked at the positives and negatives of each one of these ways of showing emotional labor. We also looked at emotional dissonance, which is similar to cognitive dissonance, and how it influences individuals. We also looked at some of the negative emotions which can occur in workplace, which look more or less similar in nature. We also looked at a very important emotion, which is anger, and we looked at the negatives of being aggressive and also the importance of using aggression as an energy to create something constructive. We also looked at the difference between assertiveness and aggression. We looked at passive aggression and what are the different forms of aggression or why aggression can happen. We looked at assertiveness as an alternative to aggression. We defined what is assertiveness and what stops people from being assertive. One important reason why people are not assertive is instead of being assertive, people use aggression as a way to resolve their issues. One major reason is lack of sense of security. So if someone is not very confident or someone fears that they may be ridiculed, they may not be assertive. Instead they show aggressiveness. So this is where we stopped. We are going to look at another important emotion related reaction, in workplace, which is stress. Research on stress, workplace stress, has gained a lot of momentum during 1960s, 70s, and 80s. Especially many research from the biological impact of stress in workplace has been studied in organizational behavior research. One important reason for why there's a lot of focus on workplace stress is workplace stress can be seen as an occupational hazard. Occupational hazard means things in your workplace which can lead to damage to you physically, isn't it? Like, for example, if you're working in a heavy industry, accidents can create physical damage. Similarly, the design of the assembly line, if there are any issues, that can cause harm to the individual. Or the work involves too much of physical labor, it can lead to physical hazard. So hazard means negative effect due to work. So typically occupational hazard was seen as physical in nature. For example, if someone is working in a manufacturing company, he or she gets injured by some accident for which the person is not responsible, or if he or she gets a fracture in his hand or leg, you can get compensation for that, isn't it? Because it happened in workplace, because it is not your it's not your mistake. Organizations are entitled to compensate you legally and also morally. Morally means, because it happened in workplace, they are morally responsible. Legally responsible because legal rights or constitution or labor laws insist that if an employee is injured in workplace, you need to pay compensation. Organization need to pay compensation. This is for physical hazard. What about psychological hazard? Damage can happen psychologically also, isn't it? One important psychological hazard or cause for a psychological hazard is workplace stress. For example, if somebody gets a heart attack because of high work pressure, or because of the negative environment in the sense people around them are very aggressive, the boss is very aggressive, very high work pressure, long hours of work. So all those reasons can lead to heart attacks or other physiological symptoms. So if that happens because of psychological reasons, is it the responsibility of the organization, or the organization is it entitled to pay compensation for the employee? That's a question mark, isn't it? In other words, is the organization responsible for the negative effect of stress on employees' health? Okay. So one important argument people use is the person or the employee can decide to manage the stress. Stress is not necessarily something which is very tangible in nature. So stress is perceived. You perceive, for example, some people may find it very, not everybody gets heart attack in workplace. The work environment might be same. If there are 10 subordinates under a boss, not all 10 subordinates feel or get negative effects because of the way the boss manages them, or the way the work pressure affects them. So in that sense, employees are responsible. They should know how to manage their own stress, because it is very subjective in nature. But again, you can't deny the fact that stress has a negative impact. It's not that everybody will not get heart attack. Okay, so it's not that everybody will get heart attack. Different people will have different negative reactions. One person may get heart attack. One person may get into drug dependency. They may drink more. Alcoholism might happen. Some person may get other physiological disorders like ulcer or back pain. So it's not like every person will react to stress in the same way, but there is a negative impact of stress. And if the stress is because of the way the work is structured, the way managers manage their subordinates, then organizations are responsible, isn't it? So stress is in fact considered to be an occupational hazard, and organizations are responsible to reduce workplace stress, or organizations are responsible to help employees manage the stress effectively. So how can they help people or employees manage their stress effectively? Probably, train them to manage their time, or help or train managers to use better ways of managing their subordinates instead of like shouting at them or throwing things at people. So you can also sensitize managers to adopt better ways of managing their subordinates, and also other ways in terms of structuring the work in the way that people are not burdened by a lot of work, or scheduling work in a way that deadlines are not very frequent, or deadlines are not very short. Okay, so like I said, there are a lot of indirect evidences which show that stress, especially workplace stress, has a very severe negative impact on health of the employees. Even if the workplace is not necessarily stressful in terms of work pressure, there are other ways in which work can lead to negative effect on employees, or the way work creates certain changes in our life, that can also lead to negative effect. I'll give you a very simple example. In fact, recently there's a lot of talk or discussion about the negative effect of sitting in a place for very long time. So for example, nowadays most of the work in urban context are white collar jobs, and most of these white collar job means jobs which doesn't require physical activity, and many of these white collar jobs involve sitting in one place for very, very long hours. So people, when they come to office, they sit in a chair for 6 to 8 hours. In between, maybe once in a while they walk for tea, or for lunch, or meeting their subordinates or boss. Otherwise, people sit in the chair for very long hours in their desk. They work from the desk. So long hours of sitting in the same place can have very serious negative impact. In fact, they say it is more injurious than certain behaviors like smoking. Okay, so things like obesity, negative impacts can range from obesity. Obesity means overweight, heart attacks, diabetes, many such problems can arise. Physiological problems can arise when you don't move around. Okay, and if the job requires sitting there for long hours, it can lead to negative impact. Another important lifestyle change which has happened because of change in the way people work is, like I said, sitting for long hours, to being awake for long hours, or reduced sleep cycle. What I mean is, people go to bed very late. They may sleep for 8 hours or 7 hours, but they go to bed very late in the night, maybe 12, 1 o'clock, 1 in the early morning, or 2, and get up late. So, which is again can be very damaging for our bodies. For example, there is something called circadian rhythm. Every body has a cycle which is synchronized to the solar cycle also. Normally we get sleep by 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and normally the rhythm if you follow the rhythm, you'll wake up at 6 o'clock. So if you disturb this rhythm for very long hours, or disturb this rhythm for many days, it can have a negative impact. Especially it can have impact on immune system. Sleep deprivation or change in the sleep cycle can affect your immune system. Similarly, many of these works, IT jobs, which involve working with or partnering with people from other countries. So they wake up in the night shifts, they wake up in the night, sleep in the morning. So again, you're pushing or changing the sleep rhythm to a very different cycle of sleep and wake. So that can lead to health effects, serious health effects, if you are doing it for many years together. Okay. So these are some of the negative impact of work related behavior on body or physiological well-being. It can also have psychological well-being. For example, what happens now, especially young people who are working in IT jobs, is even if there are 5-day work week, those 5 days of work is like highly stressful, long work hours, and weekends people party. For them those are the only 2 days which they have. So they do everything possible. They stretch themselves too much. So that also has a lot of negative impact on their bodies and also on their mind. So the point I'm trying to make is, organizations are also responsible for that, because you are causing certain kind of harm to your employees. Okay. Stress has both psychological effect as well as physiological effect. Even though stress is, or what causes stress can be psychological, but the impact on body can be very real. Okay. So what is stress? Stress is a non-specific response of the body to situation, which means there is a set of reactions body undergoes when it feels there is something is threatening to its survival. Okay. In fact, this is like our biological reaction. Stress is nothing but a biological reaction to a perceived threat, or a real threat or a perceived threat. Real threat means something which is there. Perceived threat means you think there is something which may harm you. So this is like our Stone Age kind of a reaction. So let's say the prehistoric human beings, they lived in forest, isn't it? So for them, everything around them can harm them. For example, suddenly a wild animal can attack them, or if they are crossing a river, they can fall and get injured, or it can be an illness which can kill them. So or if they pick up a plant and eat, it can be harmful and that can kill them. So most things around them was harmful for a prehistoric human being. So for them, any situation can be perceived as a threatful situation, isn't it? So for them, if there is a threat, there are only 2 options available. So they have to be very alert to what is happening around them. When something is perceived to be threatful, or when there is something which is really threatful, there are 2 options available. Either you fight it or you avoid it, isn't it? This is what happens in the biological reaction of stress. So stress is a non-specific response of the body to situation which is considered to be threat. The threat can be real or perceived. Let's say in modern world, many of the threats are perceived. Let's say your boss says or your teacher says, I want to meet you in my office. Okay, in a very stern voice. You will think, oh, something is going to go wrong. He's going to shout at me. He's going to give me more work, or maybe something I've done wrong and he is going to fire me. Okay, so many of these things are perceived, imagined, and suddenly your body undergoes a certain kind of physiological reaction. So this physiological reaction is called stress reaction. So when we perceive something or some experience as overloading, which means you cannot take it, so that leads to some physiological abnormality. So there is a normal physiological reaction, which means when you are in a normal state, there is something called homeostasis. You are in a normal state, physical state. When there is a threat, suddenly your body changes, because there are some biochemical changes, your hormonal changes, your certain internal biochemical secretions happen, that leads to some physiological abnormality. For example, when you are in a normal condition, you breathe normally. If there is a threat, we tend to breathe more shallow manner and breathe more. Okay, so the breathing cycle reduces. Let's say normally if you breathe 60 times in a minute, you breathe 80 to 90 times a minute. Similarly, your heart rate increases when you are stressed. When you feel something as stressful, you sweat more. All those changes happen. Why? Because there are some biochemical changes which happen inside, because you perceive something to be stressful or threatening. Okay, so why this happens? This is an adaptive response, because like I said, prehistoric human beings, there are real stresses, there are real threats which happened around them. So only when their body, these biochemical changes happen, they can either run fast and avoid that threat, or they can fight that threat. Okay, so it is a normal reaction for a real threat which usually happen in prehistoric times. But now most of the things which we think are stressful can be relooked and reinterpreted. You can see it as an opportunity also, sometimes threats. Okay. So stress is an adaptive response to an external situation that results in physical, psychological and behavioral deviation. Physical changes, like I said, sweating, heartbeat increase, your breathing rate increase. So these are physical changes. Psychological changes can be you become nervous, your ability to make right decisions comes down, you feel jittery. Jittery means shaky. Behavioral deviations can be, some people bite their nails, some people fidget. Fidget means, like, let's say if they have pen, I've seen in examination students, when they don't know the answer to the question, they will keep clicking their pens. Okay, so these are some of the reactions which can happen because of stress situations. Okay, there is so this entire set of reactions, biological reactions, are called as general adaptation syndrome. Okay, so this is actually the chain of reactions which happen biologically to any person when they encounter stress. So the first reaction is alarm reaction. You perceive something to be stressful, or there is a real threat, or you perceive something as a threat. The first reaction is alarm. People tend to get alert. You get alert. When you get alert, the pupil size increases. The eye pupil size increases. Why? Because again, it is like a required thing for prehistoric human beings. So they want more information. When the pupil increases, more light enters, you can see more things, and your heart rate increases. Your heart rate increases because you need more blood flow to your limbs, hands and legs, so that instead of blood flowing to your stomach and brain, more blood flows to your legs and hands. Why? Because you need to fight or you need to run. So all these things are called alarm reaction. It is adrenal discharge. Why it happens? Because adrenaline, there is a neurochemical called adrenaline. Okay, if you would have studied biology, you would have studied about autonomic nervous systems. So autonomic nervous system triggers some of these biochemical reactions. So one important thing happens is adrenaline as a biochemical agent which gets releases. It's kind of a hormone which releases, and that leads to a chain reaction, which leads to increased heartbeat, diluted pupils, sweat rate increasing, all those stuff. So that's the initial reaction. So this initial reaction, like I said, for prehistoric human beings, it's either run, which is flight, running away from the threat, or fight, encountering the threat and fighting it. So if it happens after some time, you are away from the threat. Either you kill that animal which attacked you, or you get killed, or you run away from it. Okay, so everything is over. But if the stress continues, but what happens now in modern days, there is nothing like a real threat. You keep on thinking about it for very long, isn't it? So the stress continues for days, continues for months, hours together. So if you keep getting into the state where this alertness continues, our body tends to resist this change. So usually in this alert state, first level, you are like rubber band. Normal state, you are stretching it. If you stretch a rubber band, it will resist that stress, stresses that stretch. It will try to come back to its original position. So this is the second stage. The first stage is you are in a stress, your adrenal reaction happens, adrenal discharge happens, you are in a highly alert state, more blood to your hands and legs, so you're in a very alert stage. So it's like stretching a rubber band, but you cannot stretch it for very long, isn't it? The rubber band tries to come back to its normal position. So that is the second stage. Your body tries to cool off, tends to settle back. So that is the second stage. Third stage is, let's say if you are like keeping the rubber band for too long in a stretch position for many days, what will happen? It will not go back to its original state and its elasticity is lost. It will become weak. The rubber band will become weak. So that is what happens in the third stage. If you keep staying the same stressed state for very long, alert state for very long, our body tends to collapse. Okay, that is what happens in the third stage. Okay, so if you want to avoid, you cannot avoid stress. Threats happen. So what you can do is, maybe in the first stage itself you can resolve that. Sometimes even before the first level, you can when there is something stressful, you can stay calm and ask yourself, why this thing is stressing me? If my boss shouts at me, why I'm getting stressed, or why I'm getting feared of this incident or this manager or this person? You can ask questions to yourself and try to resolve it. So that is not even entering into the first level. Second thing you can do is, you have entered into the first level, you get stressed, but you can ask yourself, why should I stay here for very long? Why should I be alert for very long? Things like deep breathing techniques, or sitting quietly and not focusing on the stress situation. So those things also make you feel relaxed. So you will not get into second stage or third stage. Okay. So stress is not necessarily because of a threat situation. Stress can be of many different, stress can happen because of many reasons. Stress can be of different types also. Eustress means stress which happens because of positive incidences. For example, you get a promotion, suddenly something you didn't expect, but something very positive has happened. Suddenly somebody says you won some billions of dollars in a lottery ticket. Okay, so you feel very, very elated. You cannot handle that news. So that is called eustress. Positive stress. Distress. Distress means stress because of negative threat, or somebody has, your close friend or family member has met with an accident, or we have fallen ill, or there is a job loss. So all those things are distress. Hyperwork stress is too much of pressure in work, so that can lead to stress. You cannot handle so many things at the same time. That is hyperwork stress. Hypo stress means the work is so boring. There is no challenge in your work. In fact, highly challenging work is better than no challenge in work. There is nothing interesting to do in work. So that can also lead to stress. In fact, there are experiments which show that when people are put in a room where there are no stimuli, no light, no sound, no, you cannot touch anything. So that can lead to high levels of stress also. Okay, compared to, the other way around is also true. Very heavy music or very bright light can also cause stress among people. Hyperstimulation. Similarly, low stimulation, no stimulation, that can also lead to stress, which is true in workplace also. Very high stress, work pressure can lead to stress. Very, very low work pressure can also lead to stress. Okay. So stress, like I said, stress can be caused by many factors. At organization, job and organization related factors. For example, the job is very demanding, job requires multitasking, and as a person you are not you don't like multitasking means doing many things at the same time, so that can lead to stress. Organization related stress can be change initiatives. Suddenly there is a change in the organization and there is a lot of uncertainty, or your organization wants you to learn new skills, or there is a job cut which is happening, attrition which is happening, or people are fired. All those things can lead to stress. The second kind of stress can be life stresses. Something happens in your life. For example, life changes. Someone has to become a parent, or somebody has lost their spouse, or close relatives. So those are changes in the life. Or you move to a new city, you move to a new country. So all those things can cause stress. Daily stresses, traveling to work, commuting to work, you don't have time to manage things, lack of sleep, all those things are daily stresses. Life trauma can be something like very severe which has happened in your life, which can make you feel hopeless. Okay, like I said, losing someone very close to you, or meeting an accident, or there is a disaster which happened around you, earthquake and all things, tsunami and things like that. So those things can also lead to stress, which are called life stresses. Trauma, which are called trauma. Third is personal stresses. There may not be anything happening around you, or organization also is like very stable, but even then personally something happening to you can be stressful. For example, aging, things which we could have done easily at a certain age, now it becomes difficult, like physical problems, arthritis, obesity, diabetes, all those things which happen because when we age, heart related problems, which can also lead to high levels of stress. Like I said, having a children, first time parent, can be also be very stressful. Especially, there is something called new parental blues, which means when young parents, when they have the first child, they get very, very stressed. Okay. The negative effects of stress: low productivity. Why organizations should ensure their employees are less stressed? I'm not saying no stress. There should be optimal level of stress, but employees should be able to manage the stress. So why they should do it? Why it is important for organizations? Because it can lead to low productivity. Employees who are highly stressed for a very long time, their productivity levels will come down. There will be absenteeism. They'll fall ill frequently, so they will be absent for many days. They will get irritated soon. They will fight with others. People who are highly stressed, they will get irritable and they will fight with others. At extreme situations, they may have suicidal tendencies. They will feel they want to die and things like that. In fact, there is something called burnout. When you are stressed for a very long period of time, they'll get into burnout. Burnout means you will feel there is no meaning in living. You are like completely tired and exhausted, highly depressed. In fact, depression can also happen when people stay in the alert stage for very long periods of time. They may also feel isolated. Isolated means they feel hopeless, they feel life is meaningless and things like that. So all those things can have a negative impact on their work performance and work culture, which may affect the organization. Okay. Some of the physical things which can happen to employees can be sleep disturbance. If you are stressed, first thing which gets affected is sleep. They will not get sleep. Their blood pressure may go up. In fact, stress is one of the major causes for diabetes. And very common reaction is backache. People, especially IT employees, one, because of their lifestyle, they have been sitting in the same place for very long hours, posture related problems, and also lot of workload. So all those things can lead to backache. I've seen a lot of IT employees getting this backache, which is very common for these kind of employees. Bowel irritation. Bowel irritation means stomach related problems. Sexual dysfunction. People, their sexual life becomes affected. Okay. So how to manage stress? Very simple way to manage stress is being self-aware. Like I said, many of these stressors are psychological in nature. We perceive them to be threatful. So if you ask yourself why I'm getting stressed, most of the times that question itself will reduce the stress. So you should also be aware what things stress you. So try to understand how to manage those things effectively. For example, time management. You are poor in managing time. That's why stress happens. So you try to learn how to manage time effectively. Similarly, being non-assertive. Your boss shouts at you always. So you should understand how to manage your boss. So that will reduce stress. So understanding what are the threats by being self-aware will help you reduce those things and become more controlled over those things. So if you awareness itself gives you more control, that reduces stress. Second is mindfulness. Mindfulness means when something is stressing you, ask yourself, how can I change it? Why I'm getting stressed? Breathe. Okay, this is what is stressing me. I need to control myself, otherwise I need to resolve it internally, otherwise it will take control of me. So being mindful in terms of breathing normally, instead of breathing short breaths, you try to breathe normally. Try to change the physical reaction. In fact, there is something called biofeedback mechanism. Biofeedback mechanism is, this is like a cycle. You say something stressful, your body also gets stressed, and that leads to a certain reaction. Again, that reinforces your body. So it becomes a chain reaction. So when you have to cut this chain reaction, what you have to do is, you have to behave in a way that externally it controls your physical reactions, which means under stressful conditions your heart rate will increase. That is normal. But how to slow down your heart rate or bring it to normal? One, by breathing normally. All these breathing techniques which really help to calm down your heart rate. So if your heart rate calms down, your adrenal reaction changes. Your adrenal secretion comes down. So again, you become calm. Once you become calm, you'll be able to manage the situation in a better way. Okay. So that is 2. Lifestyle changes. Instead of sitting in the same place for long hours in your workplace, try to stand and work. In fact, now there are chairs, there are work tables which can be increase the height so that you can stand and work. Okay, standing and working, having a time routine where that you eat in a certain time and go to sleep. In fact, exercise and meditation are very, very effective. In fact, exercise can reduce the negative effect of stress, because all these adrenaline and which has a lot of effects on your other chemical reactions in your body, like cortisol, which can lead to heart attack and things like that. So if you exercise, you can reduce the negative effect of the adrenaline, high levels of adrenaline for long hours. And also exercises can be a way to cope with stress in a positive way. Instead of going for getting into bad habits like alcoholism, smoking, exercise is a positive way of exerting that negative energy, releasing that negative energy. This is the end of this chapter. I hope you got some personal learning also from this chapter. We'll meet in the next lecture. Till then, take care.